Good afternoon to all of you, and a warm welcome to this webinar called as Facets of Impact, a conversation with environment change makers, hosted by Nusocia. For the sake of those who are joining us for the first time, I would like to briefly introduce Nusocia. We are a strategic CSR design and impact advisory organization, and we dream of a society where every actor is socially responsible. And towards that goal, the academy wing of Nusocia brings together various conversations, and this time we are bringing together the facets of impact, a conversation series where we identify and bring before you interesting models on social and impact entrepreneurship and enterprises who are using a very innovative ways of tackling some of the basic, unique, fundamental needs of the society. So, be it in the space of environment, healthcare, education, or even creating other widespread change in the society. So, in the previous two episodes of Facets of Impact, we have had interaction with change makers in the space of education and livelihood sector. You may check out those conversations on our YouTube channel. In today's episode, we bring before you some amazingly inspiring change makers and leaders, actually, who are tackling tackling challenges in the environmental sector in India. So we have with us Mr. Amit Saha, Mr. Dimlindu Jha, and Ms. Tripti Jain. This session is going to be moderated by Ms. Sultanat Kasi. Sultanat is a fellow at the Energy and Resources Institute, Delhi, and she has authored several publications in the domain of environment in the form of books, manuals, and articles, with a career in the sector for over 20 years. In 2018, she also led the execution of a green hackathon, where more than 100 innovative tech-based hacks that addressed prevailing environmental problems in Bangalore were showcased. So she is somebody who is really working in creating more awareness around the space and involving young people. I'm very pleased to welcome all our panelists and the moderator. Sultanat, I'll request you to take the conversation from here.
Thank you very much, Manju. A very warm welcome to everyone, and a very good evening to all the panelists and all the participants. I'm excited to be here moderating this session with a wonderful set of panelists. And the sector that we are looking at today, the environment sector, is a wide canvas. And some of the challenges that India is currently grappling with in this sector is with regard to the management of pollution, resource depletion, degradation of the ecosystem, species and biodiversity conservation, mitigation and adaptation to the various threats related to climate change. So, with so many challenges, then how do we address these challenges? So, we at times have options where it is either through policy, through regulation and enforcement. It could be through civil society participation, or behavioral changes at the individual level, coming up with technological solutions. One very interesting solution that has been through socio-environmental enterprise, where an enterprise is designed to provide a solution to the prevailing problem that is economically viable for the person who has designed this solution. So in a way, it's like a win-win situation. And we have three panelists who will be sharing their work, where they have, come up with these kinds of designs. Before I even introduce or invite them to speak, I would just like to flag some of the prevailing issues in the environment sector with regard to, two main aspects, and that is waste and water, because the panelists have been working in these areas. So if you look at the waste sector, India is generating over 150,000 tons of municipal solid waste per day. And if you see the cities, Mumbai is the world's fifth most wasteful city. The collection efficiency in terms of how much waste is collected, it's around 83%. 30% of it is treated. According to World Bank, India's daily waste generation will reach around 3,77,000 tons by 2025. Um, and the improper management of waste has resulted in dumping of waste, land degradation, pollution of water bodies, groundwater sources are being affected, air pollution, adverse impact on flora, fauna, human health. And another very key aspect is with regard to livelihood of people who are dependent on this sector. Um, then going on to the water sector, in terms of, India has the second largest population, but 4% of potable water. Um, there are around nearly 600 million who face extreme water stress. And by 2030, the country's water demand is projected to be twice the available supply, which is implying that we are moving towards water scarcity. Um, Currently, water is the backbone of 70% of the population engaged in agriculture, and even other sectors are dependent on it for industrial purposes, such as if you look at the textile, the leather, food processing, they're all dependent on water. So again, besides domestic use, it is used widely even in the industrial sector. So the escalating demand for water resources, over exploitation of water resources. India is the largest extractor of groundwater. Then wastage and inefficient use of water and pollution of water, both groundwater and surface water, are some of the prevailing challenges in this sector. That our country is facing. So within these, with these challenges, we have panelists who have tried to, come up with solutions to try and address some of these challenges. So I would like to, move to the panelists. So I will introduce the panelists. So we have Mr. Amit Saha with us. He's the founder and CEO of Pro India Solutions, an integrated national waste management consulting firm, which was founded 2.5 years back. Before that, Amit has a long-standing 27 plus years of diverse global experience in the FMCG sector. His last corporate role was with Hindustan Coca-Cola Private Limited as the Chief Sustainability Officer for India and Southwest Asia. Welcome you, Amit. The other panelist with us is Vimlendu Jha. Vimlendu is the founder of Swecha, a New Delhi-based youth organization dedicated to enabling the society to be the change, while making a visible difference to the environment, both physically and socially. A product of Delhi University and this, Vimlendu has been acknowledged as one of the top 25 youth leaders of India by magazines like Outlook and India Today, as well as one of the top 25 youth leaders of the world by International Youth Foundation. Happy to have you here, Vimlendu. And we have Trupti with us, Trupti Jain. Trupti is the founder, director of SGIF, as well as Nairita Services Private Limited, which promotes Gungro, a World Bank awarded irrigation model. For her exemplary work creating gender-centric climate change towards inclusive development, she has been awarded with various fellowships and was recognized as the Cartier Women Laureate in 2017 for Asia Pacific region. A very warm welcome to you, Trupti. Uh, so, uh, so before I would request the panelists. I thought what you could do is you could basically introduce our audience and take them, through your journey of how you have set up your organization and how you've gone about with it. So we would like you to share details in terms of the social enterprises that you have built, what prompted you to get into this in building this social enterprise, and the challenges that you are tackling in this sector. So, can I ask Vimlendu to start?
Sure.
Thanks.
Hope I'm audible to everyone. So my journey actually started 20 years ago, and it wasn't a planned entry into this sector. It wasn't as if I was planning and plotting and preparing to be in the environment sector post my education. It just happened that I used to volunteer a lot for several social movements and environment campaigns that were happening uh, late 90s in New Delhi. This includes anti-dam campaign, anti-nuclear campaign, other movements that were happening, and that's when my interest to really do something with young people on issues of environment started, and that's where I started something called V for Yamuna, which was actually a campaign on about saving a river called Yamuna, the capital river of India in that sense, and one of the most polluted rivers of the world. Uh, and as we start moving with the campaign, we realize that perhaps it's not just about a river or a city or a bunch of young people. The issues of sustainability or unsustainability, so to say, is a national issue, is a global issue, and it's not something which has only happened in 2000. It's been going on for a long time and is going to continue for a long time, and therefore perhaps it needs a systemic, continuous, and a comprehensive intervention of sorts. And it is not something where issues of environment cannot be solved by only talk about issues of environment or as a sector. It needs to be holistic. It needs to be also cross sectoral in that sense. And that's where we started an organization called Switcha 20 years ago, where most of our work primarily is working on issues of environment, uh, looking at also how does civil society engage with issues of environment and how do young people engage with issues of environment. So if I have to define the work that Switcha does, 50% of our work is collaborative, where we actually engage with different stakeholders of our society in actual hands-on transformation of our land, of our air, of our water, which is actually cleaning and actual setting up of forests and actually going and picking up trash and actually going and upcycling and recycling of garbage. That's 50% of our work. And 50% of our work is confrontational, fundamentally looking at how there needs to be a system change, how there needs to be a policy shift in the way we look at issues of sustainability. As in, as many forests that Switcha or many other environmental groups can keep planting, but if our government of the day and whichever political party it could be, if it keeps chopping trees for mining and for infrastructure and for bullet train and for I don't know, for all kinds of things, it just doesn't make sense. So our effort will have to go not just in planting those new seeds and new saplings and creating new entrepreneurs and new active citizens, but also stopping some of this nonsense that's been going on in the name of development for a long time. And that's where, as in, if I look at my journey is a mix of being an entrepreneur and being an activist and being a community worker. I do a lot of work internationally with the United Nations on looking at sustainable consumption and production. We feel that education is extremely important in our lives. Education is very central to some of this transformation work because we need to. It's not just about working with someone at the age of 25 or 30 or 40, but some to start early on. And education has been of my interest. I like talking. I like doing too. And that's where we work a lot with schools and colleges and people who also don't go to schools and colleges on these issues of sustainability. One very last thing I would say that in all this work, my personal interest also lies in connecting these issues of sustainability with issues of justice and equity. Because the way an issue of bad water, every data that Sultanate that you gave vis-a-vis groundwater or amount of garbage that we're creating, or every criminal act of our society vis-a-vis environment has more impact on the poorest of the poor, and in fact has a direct impact on the poorest of the poor. People like us also will get affected by bad air, but I will actually have, say, a mask or an air purifier. For sure, I'll have an aquaguard or a water purifier to take care of bad water. For sure, all of us have a water supply, 24-hour, at least a tank overhead. So none of us are waterless and airless, but there is 40% of India's population that deals with these issues, and therefore sustainability has to be looked at from the lens of equity and justice, and a lot of my work also is in that space. Hope I've
Thanks.
answered your questions.
Yes, yes, Vimlendu. Thank you very much. I will come back to you later on. So I would like to request Trupti if Trupti could join in the conversation and share her journey.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, actually, I love nature, so I have choose my doing the environmental engineering by choice. But like just now, Vimeldu said that the entry of is accidental in development sectors, similar to me also. By doing the engineering, I mean graduations, I was not exposed to the development sectors or nothing. I mean specifically the women related problems, but accidentally I want to do some kind of research work instead of the technical work, so I have joined NGO. And as a part of the NGO works, I have traveled extensively in the rural area of India, including all the districts of Gujarat and the various parts of and that's give me an opportunity to see what are the obstacles in the development and what can be the right kind of strategies to solve it. And after that exposures, I thought that I should be in the government. I mean, so then I can do much better work. I mean, in terms of the impact as well as at the policy level, so that it can be reached to the larger level of the people. So I worked 12 years with the government. I mean, state government, and I just want to say that few of our accomplishments, like 20,000 women members. I mean, we have uplifted their livelihoods after the disaster earthquake affected districts in Gujarat. Similarly, being a state program director of Mahila Samakhya, we could able to form the cluster level federations which supports as a peer group to the 40,000 women members across the six districts of the Gujarat. So is that and first time in the Gujarat state it was started to form the gender policies as well as to the others. So looking at my capacities, looking at my interest and patience, I mean it was not very easy to work with the government, frankly speaking. But the impact level, I can see it was on a large scale. So, similarly, while I was working in CMEG, we have built a capacity of 159 municipalities in terms of the better waste management, in particularly their areas. I mean, door-to-door collection to the recycling to reuse. And that was, I mean, in early area. I mean, started in 90s. Uh, then after again the second accident came in my life that the bungru was evolved. I mean the bungru is, as you explained, Kazi, that it is a rainwater harvesting systems which able to farmer gives it crops in a year instead of no crops. So it helps not only the environmental benefits but economic benefits. And based on my knowledge and our exposure to the rural communities, we know that the women don't have the asset rights, and that's why they are suffering a lot. So we have given the water rights to the women. So that has been done wonderful. Right now, I think no more than 500 units are installed by ourselves, and with the government, we have installed more than 3,500 units across the 12 states of India. Also in Vietnam, Ghana, and Bangladesh, we have successfully piloted our projects, and we could reach to the more than 100,000 of smallholder farmers. And we are, I mean, we are the state of Gandhiji, so we are more influenced by him because by working with the NGO, we are more across came to the Gandhian philosophy NGOs back in the 90s era, which was a very, I mean, at that time the development sectors was on its peak. So we adopted Antyodaya principles. I mean, try to work for the poorest poor, and why that women do has explained very nicely, because they are most vulnerable in the environmental and climate change scenario. So yeah, I hope I have, cleared my 2.5 more than 27 years of journey in finance.
Thanks a lot, Trupti. Uh, Synergy between you and Wimbledon is the Gandhi Connect, his organization, Be the Change, So again, so there's that connect thread going through both of you. Okay, I'd like to go to the third panelist. We have Amit Saha with us. And Amit, you did a late career shift, being from the corporate sector to a social entrepreneur. How has your journey been?
Yeah, thanks, Atna. It's very encouraging to see on the panel people with 2 decades of experience in the sector. It's a very difficult sector. I'm already seeing it in just 2 years. So I'm the kid here from the NGO standpoint. I mean, as you said, I've been a corporate person all this while. So right after engineering, I joined companies, and when I realized that I have done 30 years with Coca-Cola, 20 years with Coke, and about 10 years before, I thought that it's time for me to kind of do something on my own. So right after my second MBA from ISB in 2017, where my professors were telling that, no, what's your purpose in life, and they keep prodding you that, no, is this your purpose? So I thought that, I think uh, the space around plastic waste is something which probably needs attention beyond just being one of the uh, persons within the Coca-Cola system, because it's everywhere. And fine, one of the constituents and one of the companies which actually create that was my company, but then there were many others, and I thought, no, this is the time to kind of jump out and see how I can benefit the rest of the organization. And the three things that I brought me to decision point was the all the three important aspects of sustainability. People call it, people, planet, profit, or whatever you call it in various ways. But this was a plastic waste which had no had definitely had an issue in terms of going into the environment. Not less than 9% of it has ever been recycled. All this while, and things are absolutely in a very poor shape. One of the solid waste, but the other solid waste somehow will get composted or kind of still get managed. Plastics has such a life that it will stay there for generations, like 500 years, 1,000 years, and that will flow into rivers. And Lindu talked about Yamuna. So Ganga and Yamuna are top 10 rivers, most polluted rivers, even from the plastic standpoint. And then it goes to the sea and creates a great Pacific patch and things like that. So obviously, first reason was environmental. The second was profit, because I had come from Coke, so I realized that there is money which can be made in plastics. Even the recycled plastics have a big market. You will never find a scrap dealer going out of the market or getting bankrupt. Their business continues to run. Kabaddi walas continue to run. So there is a way to bring that thing back, and what is profitable will come back and find its own value chain. How to help create a national value chain, especially with the plastic waste rules which came in 2016, where corporates were getting pushed on by a law to bring back their own plastic waste. And the third was that an India specific situation, which is how does actually waste get collected in India. So honestly, where the waste doesn't get collected in India, it just gets thrown around from one place to the other. And what gets really collected is by the waste picker, because the valuables are always picked up, and it's either from the roadsides, or even they actually stand up on the landfill areas and actually pick up the waste. So again, to point of to Vimlendu and Trupti, that uh, the poorest of the poor, they have to find ways to kind of earn, and they're mostly migrant labor, and they come to the cities and have they don't have education. If they don't have education and they don't find any other job, they get into this. Uh, and they actually live 17 years younger. I mean, they die 17 years younger than you and me. I mean, you can imagine this is a hard fact, because they contact a lot of diseases, and they are in such conditions where they inhale all the poisonous gases, and in this time and COVID times, you never know what happens to them. So this three things actually was rolling up into one opportunity, which was Pro India, and I jumped into this with a clear intention of making a model which will work and maybe taking away some of the value. That is the for-profit company which you see on the back wall of my uh, room, and the realization that waste pickers are an important constituent back, and if we are able to somehow motivate them, incentivize them to even bring the pouches and the other things which are generally thrown around, chips packets and gudka packets and stuff like that, if we are able to monetize that for with the help of the companies who are actually responsible for the same, the producers, uh, I know they will get eventually benefited. So that was the reason, and the other thing was that uh, in India, there is so much of requirement of capacity development in people like you and me, who would not even care to segregate the waste into dry and wet waste, and manage that. And even if we do, then we don't have infrastructure onwards from our homes itself. But the first and the most important point is the awareness around waste segregation, or removing of the plastics from the rest of the waste. So these two aspects, which were more around social causes and awareness, we created a Circular Economy Foundation at the same time as Pro India was created. And the Circular Economy Foundations, which is a Section 8 company, had the role, or has the role, of creating the awareness and working with the waste pickers. So those are the two things that we have started. It's been a very short journey. So it's been learning all this while. The biggest learning in the COVID times are that, number one, the most of the money from CSR funds have gone away to COVID relief. Number one. Number two, most of the migrant labor have gone away from the cities. So there is waste which is lying around in the cities, and not easy to manage. And number three, the oil prices are down, so recycled plastic is more expensive than the virgin. So all these three are the headwinds in a way to our business, but no, I'm sure we'll come back and manage this as things improve. But it's been a short and a sweet journey so far, I would say.
Thanks, Amit. Yeah, so I mean, one thing which came out very clearly across all three of you was that, I mean, in addition to addressing an environmental problem, there were also issues that, in terms of equity, justice. So you were looking even at the social spectrum in addressing issues, ensuring, gender in terms of agriculturists, they are made part of it. The most vulnerable sectors, are taken care of in terms of the rag pickers. I would like to get into take off from what you said just now, Amit, and that was with regard to the challenges that you are facing now in this COVID situation. So, Trupti, how you work closely with the farming community. So, how has your experience been due to this pandemic? Has the work got impacted? Or what is the scene on that front?
Yeah, thanks, Kazi, for asking this one. Actually, I just want to talk with the for the general scenarios, and then talk with the farmers, so that you can able to macro to micro we can link it. Uh, As the COVID-19 pandemic unfolds, the dominant narrative in the climate change space is that nature is healing. Everyone, every post you can see that the nature is healing. You can see the Himalayan from the some 200 kilometers away and like that way, which is very true also. But as we know that, as Amit has just mentioned, that there are the issues of migrant laborers, and more important issues are that the financial impact created by the COVID-19. So we all know that in the long run, this financial impact will leave millions more vulnerable to the climate change. And we all know that poor are the more vulnerable to the climate change impact, and many more are going to be become a poor. So it has impact of the climate change is increasing instead of the we can see the short term the positive impacts. I just want to quote over here. This is the Rohit Gupta. He's a scientific historian. He says that COVID-19 could be the nature's warning against because the microbes are the first to ring an alarm. So, is the many more climate change impact will come? This COVID-19 will be the just the initial alarm for all of us. So, including first we'll start with the poorest poor, and then gradually it will affect the all the species of the on the planet. The farmers community which with whom I'm working, it is poor, but positive part is that very close to nature's. So first impact of is occurs on them every time, whether it is a flood or drought, and that's why I think we have discovered the Bhumru to support them to adapt it this climate change impact. So Bhumru will work in flood and drought both the areas, so they can manage this both climate change impact and convert it into the economic benefit. About the COVID, I think the most impact is happened that market. The farmers have lost their market, and of course they could not get the sufficient price of that. I mean, so we have seen the many farmers own grown crop, wasted, and even it's not utilized at the local level. So that was the first impact on the farmers aspect. Um, and it is, I mean, on the health wise, it will comes later on gradually, because it's like now is on urban, now it is very fastly spreading over the rural area because many people are migrating to the rural area. So the health expenditures and health impact, I think they will devastate their economic for at least for 5 years or something. So it is worse than the flood and drought situations what they have was facing. This has the many much more impact on it. Hope I
Yeah. Yes, yes. Thanks, Shruti. So yes, the financial implications is going to be very long-term implications that we would need to deal with. Um, Amit, could you tell us about your experience in terms of how are the different stakeholders responding? I mean, you listed out three aspects, that are there now in this whole COVID situation with migrants having moved back, the pricing changes. So, how are the different stakeholders responding?
So, Satnat, it's a short term and a long term measure. So, in the short term, I think it's survival for most of the corporates, and therefore they will probably go back and look at what is the minimal they have to spend, and where does that align with uh, what the other stakeholders, especially the government, needs, and therefore it'll perfectly fit unless and until one has a very strong reason or has very strategic direction already set in the past that we are going to do three things and only those three things. Let's say a pharma company thinks that we'll do only work with people's health or one specific part of it. Other than that, most of the other funds in the short term will maybe even in the next year continue to go towards COVID. Now this is a short term, and as COVID, experts have started looking at recessionary and recovery trends, talking about the L shape and the U shape and the V shape. I think that there will be a V-shaped recovery even for CSR activities and funds to do all such things that we are doing. One reason I feel very confident about is because deep in the mind, one thing has got seated, uh, rightly or logically or illogically. But no, I mean, not much can be reason to logic in the last 3 or 4 months. What has happened is that we have caused it. It's nature's response of self-correction. And look how clean the air is now, and how clean the Yamuna is to Vimalendu's effect that no industry is running, so there's nothing which is getting into Yamuna, and no cars are running, so there is absolutely clean air. One can see Himalayas from Delhi and Ludhiana and from wherever, I don't know. So people have realized that immediate effect, the before and after, so to say, it's so relevant. It's so I mean, you've seen in your lifetime how all these indexes have suddenly improved in 15-20 days, and that people think that, oh my God, my grandfather used to see from Pathankot to Himalayas or something like that. So one is that realization. Second is the realization that look, the human effect, the Anthropocene, or as people call it, is actually true. Is no, we have been only doing incremental stuff, and Dr. Pachori and the president elect, or what do you call it, the co-Nobel laureate. They have been only talking about 1.5 degrees, and people didn't realize. Every day morning it changes. It goes 47. Night the AC takes it to 25. So you really don't know what the temperature and the average temperature movement and carbon and everything. So people really don't relate to those things. No, it's not easy for a normal person to relate. I mean, Sadhana, you relate to it because you're a Terry professional. It's ingrained. It's hard coded. You have been taught about. But if you talk about Anthropocene, people will not realize. But they have actually seen. They have seen a recovery, a rapid recovery in the environmental parameters, health, water, air, very stark. So therefore, I think that this thing has got ingrained that probably is the nature way of giving back, and this is how the nature should be. Okay, so therefore, I feel that there is this thing has got deep seated in, especially in the corporate circles, and even amongst the uh, political echelons, that look, we have to do something about it long term. It may be long term, but we have to do something about it, and we should start taking those actions. Uh, what might work against it is obviously this nationalistic nature, where every country has become like a company, and it starts defending its company from another company which is next door, as like competition. But I think that once this prevails, once the overall activity prevails, people will come back to sustainability, and there will be this long term direction taken. If India is going to be water stressed, and if India is going to be in 2050, half of the India will not get water when you dig the borewell 300 feet, 400 feet, 500 feet, it now will become real, and people will start doing stuff around it. So I think there is a hope that there will be a recovery even in funding and in the financial situation. That's my take.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Yeah, that's really, good to know that at least, that there's something positive towards the environment. But I am a little apprehensive about the fact that, given that the economy has been hit so very badly, that, that a speedy economic recovery should not result in, overpollution. Yes, COVID did demonstrate what the environment can be, and, all of it. But that's my major concern. And there again, regulation has to play a major role. Vimlendu, over to you. I think you can take the confrontist approach.
No, you actually said exactly what I wanted to say. So you stole my words because in many ways, I don't agree with what Amit just now said. That one, this is not called recovery. What you see in the environment, just because there's birds that you can hear now, and the birds have suddenly appeared in our colonies and in our balconies. That's not a sign of a recovery. If Yamuna is not polluted right now, it's not recovery. It's a temporary lock. It's a lockdown, as in how I'm not stepping out, not because my lifestyle has changed, because I've been asked not to step out of the house in that sense. That's one. And the other, as you rightly said, it's a scary. If it has to be recovery, it's a scary recovery of sorts, because this is a forced recovery. Second, the other side of this, the way in the last 60 days, the kind of environmental norms that's been violated. If you look at EIA violations, you look at forest clearance projects, all of that. As in, if I can see a clean river, why can't our corporates and our government? And so, therefore, fundamentally, if you look at, has there been a shift in last 60 days, 90 days in the way all of us look at environment? Not at all. In fact, worse things have actually happened in the last 90 days vis-a-vis environment. Uh, like the government really, uh, at least our government, hasn't really connected issues of public health with issues of public ecology. If you look at all the stimulus packages or everything else, there's been nothing about green economy or how we need to really think about, if we need to recover out of this, can we recover slow and recover responsibly and recover, in a more sustainable way? As in, that day is not far when if we are out of this soon, with EIAs and environmental impact assessment diluted and everything else, I think in 3 days you'll have more and more factories in your neighborhood, and there'll be more and more people dying because of air pollution. So we don't want environmental checks and balances, because GDP and growth and cronyism, all of that is of more importance. Similarly, I don't think corporates are really caring about sustainability and environment right now just because they've seen a COVID situation. Fundamentally, if a company was exploiting groundwater resources for its fundamental core of business, they will continue to do that because that's what they do. As in, Unilever will not start just becoming responsible because that's what they make. As in, they make plastic. As in, Reliance is not going to. It's a polythene making company. So we're not asking, or in a sense, a petrochemical company. So if we have to address a plastic problem, are we ready to look at the rise of petrochemical industry and what is the contribution of petrochemical industry in the larger of this thing? It's not just about picking the last plastic bag on the street or the last drop of water that comes in my tap. We need to fundamentally look at our models, which we have failed in our COVID situation. Ideally, I thought that the kind of crisis, the kind of pandemic that we all are dealing with, it would have triggered some sort of a reflection, some sort of a bigger reflection, a holistic reflection by individuals, of course, because we are also contributors, but by businesses and our governments, because the biggest violators are not people who are on the Zoom call. Our biggest violators of our environment are corporations and the government, actually, in that sense, as in across many of these issues. So of course, as in, we all need to be hopeful. I'm hopeful that one day India will not be in that list of, top 5 most polluted country of the world on environmental standards, or the most polluted air uh, of the world. As in, imagine Lancet report saying that 1.5 million people, which means 15 lakh people, die every year in India because of air pollution. When was this in news? It's been in news always, but has it triggered any kind of an action or policy shift by anybody? And it has killed more than COVID, and it will kill more than COVID virus in that sense. Pollution kills more people than a virus that you and I are battling right now. So I think it's a missed opportunity in many ways. Wish there is some wisdom and that comes back, and some fundamentals of our society needs to be corrected. Fundamentals of governance, which actually looks at issues of forest, which looks at health of our rivers, which looks at health of our human beings, and connect that health of our human being, of everyone, to the health of our environment in that sense. At the end of the day, it's not the air that I buy in a mall. It's the air that I breathe otherwise, and that needs to be fixed for all. Or the water needs to be fixed not in terms of water quality of a mineral water company, but of my rivers and of our underground water. Like such a scary fact that imagine Niti Aayog came up with that report right last year, which said that 21 cities are going to run out of water. Did it trigger anything for any of us or for anyone in power? Not at all. Till date, if I ask anyone on this panel or anyone that how much money has actually been allocated for clean air program that kills 15 lakh people, no idea at all, because there's hardly been any money that's been allocated for clean air in that sense. So I would say that there is still time. The hope comes from the fact that what what COVID has taught me, at least personally in this space, that a lot of these issues we thought were irreversible. Like we have damaged Yamuna forever, or we have damaged Ganga forever, or we have damaged, our forests forever, and there's no coming back. This has only taught us that these are not irreparable damages. These damages can there is still a scope. इतना भी कमर नहीं टूटा है कि वो सीधा फिर से सर्जरी पे करोगे तो काम नहीं होगा. कुछ बीमारियां हैं जिस पे आप सर्जरी नहीं कर सकते. सर्जरी से कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. That's a lost hope. As आप तो वेंटिलेटर पे रहेंगे, and then you will have to die. In this case, we say that no, there is a scope of repair, not a forced lockdown in a COVID kind of a repair, but a systemic repair, a more responsible repair, when bottom line cannot be profiteering and growth, which unfortunately sometimes people, all of us actually connected to, because the way of viewing business as usual has killed our environment, and therefore business as usual needs to stop. These corporations need to stop. And this is, I'm not being an activist here. I'm trying to tell you that yes, as in today, if there was a fire yesterday in the Vizag factory, or if there was something that happened in Tuticorin of thousands and thousands of people dying in a Vedanta Sterlite factory, those things need to be questioned, because our children of tomorrow are being killed by some of these processes of growth and development that we're talking about, and therefore we can't put it on the carpet in the name of larger, greater, common good or growth. So we need to somewhere redefine growth, redefine development, redefine prosperity. And I think COVID should have taught us that how it's okay to live with less in that sense. And we wish that could have triggered our politicians and our policymakers and our corporate leaders in that sense.
So, Saltanat, can I come in just for a minute? No, this is a very interesting discussion with Vimalendu. I think, and I can't resist getting engaged. So, I think the panelists, the attendees might enjoy a little bit of this. Okay. So, first of all, Vimalendu, I completely appreciate your thoughts. Second is that I want to clarify that it is not a recovery. I didn't say that today's air and today's water is a recovery. It's just a starking example in front of people's eyes that look, this is also possible. Okay, this is a situation which can actually happen if you do a recovery.
Sure. As a man, I thought that as a reference. So
no. And third is that while I agree with you that industry will do as minimum as possible especially at this time, to just be compliant and get out of that basic legal path. Make sure that you're not getting caught. You don't really want your CEOs and the chairmen to be in the jail like Amway and like LG in Vizag and stuff like that. That I'm sure the companies would not want to kind of flout the rules of and get themselves into trouble, because this current government, has a pretty straightforward approach to some of these, and you've seen it in many examples. I don't want to engage on a political discussion, but let me take you a little bit philosophical right now. Most of us, as most of the brands, okay, I'm talking about brands right now, have now found, at least in the last few months, that what's relevant to consumer, especially even if the products are not getting sold, is the connect, is the purpose for what the brand is existing. Many of the brands are looking for that purpose of that connection, that emotional connect, that the customers will continue to think about a Coke or a Google or a Apple thinks that they care and stuff like that. And the way they have shown demonstrated is that they really care. Now, Black Lives Matter, for example, and this is again not a topic of discussion today, but Black Lives Matter, whether it really matters to all those corporates who have kind of stood up for it, is a question mark. But it is an important way to really connect back with community, to say yes, I am connected to you. I am not looking for my own self. So that is one of the important reasons, and that will reflect in the product and also the approach towards the products to the consumers. And you will notice that, yeah, just 1 minute more, you will notice that more and more companies will actually uh, do stuff which consumers finally want. And just to living example for you, and I'm not from Unilever, and I'm not wanting to defend Unilever in this platform, but they actually took off almost 30 products from out of the complete range. They just removed it because it has an exceedingly high plastic content. They just removed it. So they have killed those products which were selling products. And you and I probably will not do it because we are smaller organizations. They have done it. And therefore, today, Paul Polman, I mean, I don't know whether you picked the right example, because I would say Unilever is greater than Coca-Cola in terms of sustainability. So you will see Paul Polman as one of the figures in top of the mind when it comes to sustainability. Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, I'll tell you first of all, as in, there's environment is not a business, and it's not an our land, water, air is not an
A quick
just
response.
one second. So yes, and it's not an FMCG product.
Yeah.
Right? Air, water, land, and this is not an FMCG product. Two. Second, if Unilever, I could have done a great sustainability campaign, for therefore you would think of them as a green company. I met Paul Pullman twice, and I've read, and I'm sure if you look at what Unilever has done, just because it has removed 20 plastic products, the number of people that have actually been killed because of mercury contamination in different parts of the world, that's also a story. Just because you can create an ad and advertisement and fund, certain sustainability campaigns, that doesn't make a company a sustainable company in that sense. My issue is that in all of this, you think that corporations will follow environmental norms, but we all know that the fundamental businesses that are making the most amount of money have violated fundamental environmental norms, and the governments have helped them in violating them. And violation when of not something that will lead to arrest, but change of law. So when there's something called a collusional form of corruption, where if a forest clearance is not allowed because it is in violation of environmental norms, you change the land use itself in that sense. So, Amit, I would say that I have a lot, as in it wasn't a bad example. I'm an informed person on Unilever, and I'll expect you, I'll hope you also read about Unilever and their environmental crimes globally. And just because they have removed 20 companies with more plastic, suddenly, or they have now, they're calling it fair and not fair, or just and glowy. That doesn't make, this is, working on environment is not an ad campaign, and air, water, land is not an FMCG product. That's my conclusion.
Thanks, Vimlendu. Thanks, Amit. I mean, it has been a very interesting discussion, in terms of, the role of the corporates. But we need to get into the Q&A session, and there are very interesting questions on over here, and the participants would definitely want to hear your opinion on that. And since we're running out of time, I would request, to respond to this, keep it very crisp, so that we can take on, most of the questions. So there's this question on coming, with regard to what we've been discussing about the CSR fund. So what are the funding opportunities for those who are aspiring to enter into environmental social entrepreneurship? So this is a question to Vimlendu from Sanjeev Tare.
Sorry, I saw that question. What are the funding opportunities? See, the thing is that right now there one is to seek money from CSR and from the government, and the other is to really create, as Amit and many other people are doing, and we also run something called Green the Map, where we create a product which is actually filling a product gap in that sense. Like right now I also run something called Green the Map, where we make things out of trash. For example, we make wallets and bags and things. So I would say that there's more and more shift towards social entrepreneurship or self-sustainability of organizations. Uh, Funding space is shrinking. Of course, the government's funding for socioeconomic activities or is shrinking. Uh, Also, CSR funds, we have seen how a lot of it goes to the high command, to our to different kinds of funds of the government, which was actually mandated for to be a CSR to coming to NGOs. So I'd say that there is something, but there's less than what it was yesterday, and therefore it's very very important to, rather than depending on CSR funds uh, uh, or on government funds, look at creating self-sustainable community-owned initiatives. So if I'm actually doing a water harvesting work, can the community pay for it? As I'm sure that sometimes some communities live in poor and difficult conditions, and it's better that the government pays because they can't afford certain interventions. But it has to be a balance of all, and there is some, but of course, as Amit also and Trupti also said, that it's shrinking a space right now, and with COVID, with emerging other issues, it's going to be difficult in that sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Emily. Very interesting about making it on a self-sustaining. Trupti, you wanted to add something? I have a question for you, Trupti. And this is you've been working with the government department and policymakers at different levels. So, what's your view on on the direction of environment planning at national and global levels?
Okay, sorry, the question is what would you more? Environment?
What are your views on what is the direction of environment planning at national and global levels?
Okay. Yeah, first I would like to just the question one answers the extensions of the Vimaldo response. Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
That
can
is,
hear you.
yes, okay. So that's basically the idea of social enterprises coming because the funding of the NGOs are shrinking in the development sectors. Because people are now, if we are talking about the sustainabilities, then people are expecting us to sustain ourselves. So there is, I mean, you should develop a product, such kind of the products, which is sustainable in the market, and also the which is a more take care of your the three P's: people, planet, and the profit. And then because most of the there are the lots of fundings available on environmental sectors, one can visit on the www for fund for ngos.com website. Second is the CSR box and NGO box. Those two are lots of compilations of the good funding opportunities, grant opportunities, informations provided by them. But the problem is that if the funders are nowadays is expecting some kind of matching funding from you, even the CSR, I think Amit was very agreeing with me, and so that you have to be, I mean, showing some kind of the self sustainabilities, uh, even in terms of the financial. Your product should be the environmental sustainable, but in financial sustainabilities is also very important for yourself. So go with that understandings while you are thinking to open your startups or any kind of the development. Second, I have worked with the government and then the environmental policies and global policies. Basically, unfortunately, whether it is the Air Act or the Water Act or something, whatever is happened in India, it is following the Global Act. You know, Air Act coming, I mean, in whatever 1980 or something after this disasters of the Bhopal crash tragedy, and it was completely, I mean, copying of the USA Air Act. I mean, it's more or less. So this is, I mean, we are our national policies always guided by the global policies. in terms of the environment generations. That is very fact. And the global policies are now, I mean, since I have attended the COP is a global conference which are taking the decisions on the global environmental issues. And I have attending the COP, I mean 10, 11 to now this COP 25, and some of the COPs I attended. So more focus is on the involvement of the women participation. Earlier it was not that, but now the more global policies are, I mean, valuing the gender gap in the environment management, because otherwise you will, if you are not managing the gender gap, you will not able to manage the environment properly. That's the understanding have been developed, and the all policies are, I mean, focused on that direction. Similarly, in India is also now are taking off this direction. Second major shift has come earlier to this one is, earlier is like a the pollution control, I mean controlling kind of the activities, controlling air pollution, controlling water pollutions, how to do the increase the fine on the industries, how to punish the corporates, like those kind of things. Now it is the focus on most on the I mean base part of the pollution management. I mean, door-to-door collection of the waste management is one thing, but the final collection of the waste, उसके जो final रूप क्या रहता है, whether it is leachate and it is again environmentally damaging, or maybe it is, I mean, doing the air pollution. So वो जो in-depth issues होते हैं उस पर अभी ज़्यादा focus हो रहा है. So I'm saying that the policies makers have become mature day by day, and they are able to understand. But problem still with the policy makers is that, because I'm part of the government and I am also representing the grassroots, the grassroots knowledge which NGO has, I mean, they have the repo, it is not, I mean, percolating to the macro levels, or maybe it is not reaches to the macro levels for various reasons. There is the system reasons. There is no integrations of the department, and I mean there are the various reasons. Problem is there is a gap that someone knows the grassroots reality and someone are the policy makers, and both of them will never enter. And in between, the academic research institutes are also there. They have
Yeah.
some kind of findings and all the things, but they are always limited to themselves. So the biggest challenge is that how to integrate
Integrate everything together. Yeah, that is
that
a
is
challenge. Yeah.
the major challenge.
Amit, I mean, you know, we have to wind up, so you won't have much time, so keep it very short. Very interesting question is, how can artificial intelligence be used to reduce environmental pollution or tackling, you know, the plastic menace? So, if you can very quickly respond to that.
Very good question, very relevant. We're working on some of these concepts, and there is a mention of that in the new extended producers responsibility framework, which has come up for discussion on 23rd June 20 and July. All the comments are expected to come back to MOEF, in where there is a mention of blockchaining the waste. So how can the waste be blockchained back? Now, yeah, I mean, it's a technology of the next generation trying to get applied on culture of India, which is especially in the waste of 5 generations old. So one has to see how applicable it will be. But if imagine if no, Vimletu talked about Reliance and Unilever and Coca-Cola and few others. So let me try to blockchain them together into one thread. So if let's say Reliance has to produce plastics, and you know that Reliance has produced that much plastics, and you blockchained it, no, you have figured that out and you mapped it through the GST codes and transactions, then you know where the plastic is going. It's going to Unilever and a few others, the co-packers of Unilever, the system of Unilever, which is accepting that in different forms and then putting product inside it, and then moves it to the distributors, or the sellers to the consumers. So that is one forward way of knowing where the plastic is going, who's consuming it. Okay, and then there is a reverse way of pulling it back, which means that there's a lot of data which is being managed in such a way that, oh, I have taken your plastics and I've already burnt it in the cement plant, and this is your certificate. There are a lot of people who are coming and selling the certificates, and the same certificates is being sold to 10 different companies. So which means that no this is like one example in one of the cities where one had to dig a hole and took a government budget for that, and then one had to cover it back because mosquitoes were in that breeding in that lake. So never the lake was created, never the lake was filled up, but the money was actually utilized twice. In the blockchain technology, the waste actually starts coming back, and it's blockchain right from the waste pickup. So we are building up this technology in such a sense that you are able to track the waste once the waste is generated by the waste picker and made available to the next person in, it goes all the way. It's very much possible to actually start utilizing it, and then once you have data, then you can put all kind of artificial intelligence around the same. So yeah, there is a lot of work which can happen once you have data around artificial intelligence.
Thanks a lot, Amit. I would like to conclude this whole panel session that we've had. So it has been the whole discussion has been very interesting. And none of you by design ventured into this area of work. And it's more like through accident, but you have a focus, you've been working in that area. Even in the COVID times, the challenges, so there are the sector challenges, there are the challenges which are thrown up, and it's basically in these challenges how you have to adapt, and move forward. And that is very so be it in terms of the funding, like, so it's either we were whole time thinking of either it's government funds or corporate funds, but then even self-generating revenue models. So with that, I think I would like to close it and hand it over to Manju, because we've already exceeded the time. Manju?
Oh, 1 second. Hi. Thank you so much to all of you for a wonderful discussion. We've outshot the time a bit. So I will just let's pick up few things that really resonated with me due to the whole discussion. Like as Milindu rightly mentioned, that the impact of environment is it gets impacted on the most vulnerable the most, right? So that's a big thing that we all always have to keep in mind whenever we look at solutions and whenever we look at the problem as well, that the most vulnerable are the ones, so the fact of equity and justice becomes very important. And I also resonate with what Rupaji said, that the significance of having a policy level intervention, because that has the power of creating large scale change. And of course, what Amit mentioned, I agree that when we have to run sustainable initiatives, it's quite possible that we can create profit out of them as well as we do good work. So you don't have to be really trading between profit and purpose to create change. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for taking out time to be here today, all the panelists, Saltanat, for moderating the discussion really well, and all the participants who are here and have been actively participating and giving their questions. Unfortunately, due to time paucity, we're not able to take up all your questions, but we'll see how we can respond to all of them. We are concluding this particular episode here, and next week we are going to bring before you the social entrepreneurs from the healthcare space. Thank you for joining us today, and a very wonderful evening to all of you. Stay healthy, take care, and goodbye.
Thank you.